Do you work on a SaaS product or you might be thinking of building one? Good. Let me ask you something. What's the best way to save $100,000? Well, here's an idea. How about you don't spend the next 6 to 12 months building a feature that nobody wants? You don't think that might happen to you? There are literally hundreds of companies that went belly up after they built a product that ended up being either ineffective or undesirable. In fact, I've spent a lot of money and time working on a feature for Islet.io that turned out to be a flop. And what usually happens is that whenever you get into one of these scenarios, instead of stopping, you feel the need to power through it and invest even more time and effort to make it better. Truth is, I would have saved myself a lot of heartaches if I just did this one simple thing that I'm sure a lot of other people in working on SaaS already know about. And this is getting feedback from the users. Hi, I'm John, and I'm here to talk to you about Net Promoter Score surveys and how they can help you understand what your customers need from your SaaS. What's an NPS survey? I'm glad you asked. Net Promoter Score, or NPS, is a customer satisfaction metric that measures the likelihood that a customer will recommend your product or service to others. It's a simple way to gauge your customer loyalty that helps you understand what your customers actually need from your SaaS. So, how do you use an NPS survey to gauge the customer satisfaction with your SaaS? Three simple steps: collect, analyze, and act. Collecting the feedback is easy. Over the years, I've collected feedback from thousands of surveys, and I've done it in a lot of different ways. What became very clear to me is that if you want to collect feedback from a product, you want to strike while the iron is hot. What I mean by that is that while you could send emails or SMS to collect feedback, the most effective way to measure your NPS is by asking for it directly in the application. This also gives you a lot more options to reach out to your users after, for example, they've completed a certain action or they've tried a new feature in the app. It's critical to ask for feedback in a way that's comfortable and easy to do. Otherwise, nobody's gonna bother replying. All right, the second step is analyzing the data. Surveys and user feedback are important tools for learning more about what your customers think about your product or service. But without analyzing the data, you won't have any insight. Going through the feedback can help you understand what customers like and don't like about your product, as well as uncovering any issues you weren't maybe aware of. NPS surveys have four typical responders: promoters, detractors, passives, and non responders. To calculate NPS, you'll want to ignore passives and non responders. What I usually do is I actually ignore the passives and the non responders. And then calculating the score is actually far easier than you might think. The formula for NPS is simply subtracting the number of detractors from the number of promoters divided by the number of responders times 100. In other words, the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors is going to be your NPS score. That seems more complicated, but just look at the screen and you'll see it ain't that difficult. Promoters are the people that love the product and would most likely share it with a colleague or friend. The more you have, the better off you are. Detractors are the people that are not absolutely happy with the product. These are the people that are upset about a particular feature of your service. Now, some people will advise adding the non responders to the detractors, but that will always skew the results. And I personally don't do that because what I found is non responders not because they hate the product, but because perhaps they lack time to reply or they don't have the correct medium. So, what you'll find out is that detractors are more likely to drop a longer comment and take more time to complete the survey, which means that while the NPS score will measure the overall happiness of your users with your product, the detractors will actually tell you what's wrong with it. Knowing what makes people unhappy is how you grow as a product. It's what's going to take you from having a okay product to a product that users will talk about offline and online. The third step is acting on these insights. And as I've mentioned earlier, detractors are the people you want to follow closely. These are the ones that will give you some of the most valuable information that you'll want to follow in order to improve your product. You can follow up with these people in order to understand exactly what went wrong and maybe come up with a solution together. This is one of the reasons why I love using iLet to collect feedback from our users. From the dashboard, I create a new bot, and honestly, I know it's not a traditional NPS survey, but most of the time I like using a simplified one that just simply provides a positive or negative response. This way, I won't have a fancy score, but what I'll be left with is having a simple 81% of your customers responded positively, or 48% of them responded negatively. That kind of feedback. The reasons I'm doing this is that I care about creating an emotional connection with the user, and numbers don't really do that. Okay, while numbers are quick and clean, giving the users an option that describes how they feel about the product creates a simple emotional reward that makes them feel heard. But there's a second reason why I use this type of NPS survey is because I want to create a sequence that allows me to respond to the replies they ask me. The way I do it is that I have a simple question that I'm asking about the product or feature that I want feedback on, and then give them some options. But wait, there's more. Once I got enough information from the detractors and I identify the problem they're referring to, I can integrate that in the next step of the interaction. Let me give you an example. This new feature in iLet allows you to add videos on top of the checklist. After every new feature, we naturally have a survey asking the users what they think about the feature. From the dashboard, I go to create a new bot and ask the question that I want, and then give them the options that they can pick from. I usually go with 4 options to choose from that describes their feeling towards the feature or product. 2 are positive, 2 are negative. If they choose the positive responses, great. But if they choose the negative responses, that's where I use this little trick. I add a second layer, allowing them to choose what they disliked about it. I give them options. These options are based on the previous feedback that I got from the other users that left comments up until this point. And I constantly feed new answers into this NPS gathering machine. I also leave them a option to provide extra feedback if they can't find something in the list I've already provided. One of the popular complaints was that iLet did not allow users to upload videos directly to the platform. So what I did is I added that as an option that they could select. But then when they clicked on that, what I did was I give them a link to our roadmap page, as well as a little video showing a workaround. The goal of this exercise is to help the user in any way you can. And because you provided this entire experience through the app, he gets to use whatever piece of information you provide immediately. And sometimes that's enough to turn detractors into promoters. Of course, at this point, you should be collecting all the feedback and then taking it back to your team and figuring out what happens next with your product. And honestly, if there's one thing that you learn from this whole video, is that feedback is going to be the only way to improve your product. Well, that's all I got for you today. If you have any questions or comments, please visit ilet.io. I'll see you in the next video where I'll be talking about checklists and user centers. See ya.